Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ready. Today, we're going to be talking about that time of year that's approaching right now and is upon us, the time of year that I used to despise as a child, and I still get that weird feeling when I walk back into a retail store and I see ads for this, and that's back to school. I don't know about you guys, but I just don't. I still remember my childhood memories, and I know my wife says maybe because I didn't go to a good school. I thought my school was great. But at the same time, it just wasn't a good feeling after being outside playing all summer. I don't know if kids these days have a different feeling about it after being home playing video games and social media and maybe texting all summer. But when we were outside playing all summer,
Yes.
we didn't not want to get dressed up and go back into a classroom.
No. And I do not remember walking through stores as a kid and seeing back to school out in July. Like, it upsets me. Like, I'm walking through a store and I'm like, I don't want to see that. And what I really don't want to see is also those parents that are already swarming because people like me who are like, the week before school starts, we have nothing because of these people that take it all. I'm like, can we just agree to wait?
Right now, this year is my first year. I'm ahead of the game because Anna's starting high school and it's a whole new start for her. New personality if she wants to be. Like, she gets to show her personality. And she's had the same book bag because she's authentically liked it for 5 years. So I told her, whatever you want, you may have. Let's go shopping. Let's start high school right, because she's going to 2 separate high schools. One is an engineering high school. So she has that excitement. So mine's a little bit odd. And I am going to be that mother who's there getting all the supplies right away. But it's financially expensive. And going into high school, I'm already thinking, and I know Ken probably is going to be shaking here pretty soon, of how much it's really going to cost to go back to school. Because it's costly.
It's crazy expensive. It's like Christmas in September. Well, I'm sorry, July, literally, because if you're buying your supplies. It's insane. I was a teacher. Not too many, you guys all know that, I think, but I was a teacher. I taught 5th grade. That was what I got my degree in. And I don't remember even as a teacher having the expectation of all of these supplies when my kids, they're teenagers now, but I remember 1st grade, it was like they wanted 12 glue sticks or something. I'm like, my kid is never going to use 12 glue sticks. That's a problem.
It was all about what kind of Trapper Keeper, what you're going to get. Was it the Star Wars?
The Trapper Keeper!
You're dating yourself with the Trapper Keeper.
Oh, mine was black and gold. Black and gold.
I said Trapper Keeper. My kids were looking at me like, what are you?
I loved my Trapper Keeper. That's not a thing anymore.
No,
right?
They don't call it that. They don't even know what they call it. Binders and whatever. They have a whole new 5-star system. But yeah, now it's a binder for every class. But the whole point of all of this is that the money racks up.
It does.
It's an expense.
It does. And also outfits, wardrobe. I don't know. I know I was wanted to start out school with new shoes, new outfits that kids hadn't seen the year before. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of pressure unless they go to a school with a uniform. But even then, shoes might not be part of the uniform, and maybe that's where they can express themselves. And no, it all adds up.
Yeah.
And some of that is coming into play in a lot of my divorce cases and post-judgment divorce cases and situations where we discuss child support and who's paying for what. How does that get determined? And sometimes people carve out a special section on how they're going to handle it. But most of the time, it just comes out of child support. And but it's something that a lot of people, when they're getting a divorce, don't think about that expense. Extracurricular activities are almost always built in on who's going to be responsible for it or how you're sharing it. And sometimes sports and different types of things like that. But people often forget the back to school portion. And most of the time, if it did go to court, the judge is going to say, well, that's what child support's for, and the person receiving it and the person paying it both should contribute and figure it out. But sometimes you could do something to set aside a little bit of money or have an agreement on how that's going to be handled. And, most of the time, I believe as they get older, it could get more expensive, but sometimes as they're younger, it's expensive also. So
I can tell you, having 3 kids, when I first got divorced, my child support was more than it ever was because, they were youngest at that point. And even with spousal support for a couple of years, the back to school that I had to spend for 3 kids was more than a whole month. It was probably almost double 1 month of my child support.
imagine.
And that was what, that's what people, that's what child support is for. Not really when things have changed. They're asking the school systems, the financing is different, and they're asking parents to subsidize a lot of these supplies. And it's an expense, and they want a different binder for every class. This all adds up when you have multiple kids. So I do think it's something that needs to be addressed. And people do, I know you talk to your clients about that before it's written into stone. This is something that needs to be looked at, because it's not just a couple of clothes and some pencils.
No, it goes
a lot
much deeper than that, because it opens up so many more questions. And let me pose you a question. Yes, we're talking about school supplies right now, but let's go deeper into it. What about choosing the school? Do you have clients, when they just go through the divorce, choosing the school districts, choosing what school the kids are going to be attending?
For sure. And most of the time, in most situations, both parents have joint legal custody. And within legal custody is the ability to make decisions regarding school. If it's joint, you both have to agree. If you don't agree, a judge decides for you. Sometimes, if their children are already in school, they've identified the school that the child goes to, whether it be a public school or private school. If it's a private school, then oftentimes we'll address who's paying for it, how it's getting paid, as long as the parents agree. If it's a public school, be the school district, unless something changes. And sometimes we could put triggers in there. Sometimes it just be addressed later. Oftentimes they're silent as to the and then. It's just that school district. But sometimes people are still living in the same marital home at the time they enter into this agreement, and they forget to take into account where they're going to move, where they're thinking about they're going to live. And a lot of times people don't even really know at that point, because it's more and more common these days for people to stay living together in the same household until the divorce is final. So it's harder to really think about where you're going to be or where life's going to take you. So it's important to kind of, I know nobody has a crystal ball and can determine or think about what's going to happen in the future, but it's important to put in how you're going to deal with this. Are you going to go back to a mediator? Are you going to already have triggers in there, factors on whoever has the bigger house? This isn't something that's common, but for example, the bigger house, that's going to determine the school district. Is it going to be in the one that's rated higher, but in which ranking? Every ranking is different. So there's several things that somebody needs to consider, but oftentimes people aren't thinking about those when they're initially going through the divorce. Where we see more of it is in the post-judgment and situations where now in back to school season, people want to change school district for one reason or another. Either their kid's not happy at school, or most commonly, they're buying a new house that's in a different school district.
I was going to ask about that next, because for us in mortgages, what's important right now is because we're coming into almost a school year. In order to enroll your kid, you just need a purchase agreement. So I have a client right now who's pushing through.
Is that all it takes, really? Just a purchase agreement?
Yeah,
really?
A purchase agreement to show that you're purchasing. And then
what happens if the deal doesn't go through?
Now, I've heard someone do that before to get into the Stony Creek district, where they pulled out of an offer and got their kid into the school. That's hearsay. That's hearsay. I don't know.
That would seem almost too easy to go.
Yeah, that sounds.
Wow.
But in the Rochester area, you're not going to be spending X amount of money. But I don't know. That was hearsay. But right now, I have a client pushing in the Novi area, and she's just trying to find a house so she can get that PA to give that to the school district to get her kids in now, because apparently, and I actually think the school district they're in is pretty decent. I'm not going to say the school district now, but I actually thought it was pretty decent. But she really wants Novi, so she's pushing to get that PA.
Yeah. It's not just the ranking of the school district, though. A lot of factors go into place. Where are they more comfortable? Where are their friends at? Where the majority of the activities and sports and things that they're involved in, where are those at? Where does mom and dad or both parents live in relation to the school? Because don't forget, while you, for example, might be moving out to Novi because it's a better school district for your kids, if dad still lives in Rochester, how's dad going to get the kids to Novi on time? And is it fair to do that? So the important thing is before you go out and actually seal the deal on the property that you're purchasing, check with your lawyer, check to see what your judgment of divorce says, or if you're still in the process, talk it over with your lawyer and figure out, hey, is this the right move or not? And sometimes maybe I'm not telling you not to go out and look and think about what you're going to do or potentially even engage in negotiating a deal, because sometimes that might be what takes to help your case, to show the judge or to show the other side, hey, I'm serious about this. Here's availability. Here's options. I can get approved. It's important to get pre-approval, because you could argue for a school district all you want, and if you can't even get approved for the house or property that you want to buy there, then what's the point? So make sure that you've done your homework. Make sure that you can get approved. Make sure that there's some properties that you think you can afford and want to live in, and then go back and find out, hey, is this realistic? Can I be here? As opposed to coming into court, not having done any homework, the judge is going to say, get back and stand in the back of the line and come back again. But also, don't go out and buy it right away, because you might be driving a further distance or ultimately having your kids less time.
That's such a good point, because Ken, we're talking earlier about millage rates and being tied to school districts, and how that would change pre-approval.
No, it's millage rates and property tax calculations. It's amazing how many customers really just don't understand how property tax is. It's just a 2-variable equation. A millage rate, and if there's like a millage is like 37.85, how you would read that: for every $1,000 your house is worth, you're going to pay $37.85 in property taxes. Now, when you draw a string around with the second number, here's where it gets just a little bit confusing. In the Michigan State Constitution, the values of a home, the assessed values of a home should be no more than half of what the purchase price is in the home. So the assessor in each city sets those. And I've noticed in certain cities, they're a little bit more aggressive with pushing the envelope on that. In some cities, like, they're a little bit on the lower side, which is nicer. So you got the millage rate, and that's a really good thing to point out, is like when you're looking at, most people don't know, like, you can go into Centerline school. I mean, I don't want to bring, they're in the 60s in Centerline, whereas in Utica schools are 26. You can technically buy a $200,000 house in Centerline, and it could be the same payment as a $275,000 house in Shelby. So most people don't understand that, and not to mention pricing out insurance, and it's taking it a step further. But when looking into cities and researching, if everything looks good, I think it's kind of luck of the draw too, because it'd be a good school district, but it's how your kid's going to acclimate in that district, how he's going to fit in, or he or she will. But looking at the millage rates is a good strategy. It's like it's quantify something so you can at least have something there. It's like, okay, 15 or 20. I mean, you can expect to have cheaper property taxes here than here. So, but
right.
I think it's.
And people looking for houses will say, why can't I just get a payment? If I spend X amount of dollars, what's my payment? Well, It depends. Exactly what you're saying. You have to look at the taxes, and the taxes are made up of these scenarios and these millages and different numbers. So that's huge with thinking that you're going to leave one area and go into another. You have to, you need to count your costs.
For
in
school.
Life, always count your costs.
Yeah, so it could be in the same city or township, if I'm not mistaken, Ken. If you're in the same city or township, but different school district, your payment's probably going to be different, right?
Yeah, it goes by school district. So there'll be 3 or 4 in Macomb, like there's Utica, and there's Lance Cruz, New Haven. So it could be anywhere from 26 to 31, I think, in Macomb. I had one other point too. It'll come back to my mind.
Yeah.
But it's just a good thing to look at, within, recognizing where you're going to be shopping if you are going to be looking to buy a new house, something to go off of. So
I have one more question with being able to, let's say you do, after going through the divorce, this is after everything's sealed, everything's done. You said the 2 individuals will most likely stay living together. Then they move out, and then they decide, hey, we want to move into a different school district, but they have to get an order to get approval, correct? Is that how that works?
If both parents agree, then they could stipulate to it. So it'd be by agreement that, because they have joint legal custody and they're encouraged to work together on where they believe that their children should go to school. But say there's a dispute over it, then something that wasn't thought about ahead of time and built into the judgment of divorce, then at that point, somebody would motion to court to hear it. And I recommend that, it's going to be tough to change anything for this school district, but even now thinking ahead to next school district, we've had some hearings in a lot of courts in the Metro Detroit area where they'll hear the motion and then they determine whether or not there's enough to move it on to what's called an evidentiary hearing. And most courts are sending these out for December and January now. So at the soonest, it's not going to take, because most judges and courts aren't going to split people halfway through the year. This year could potentially be out unless you get somebody to agree. Now, check with your attorney. Your attorney will check with the other side. And sometimes people can, by stipulation, or if somebody files a motion, maybe then they could sit down or get into a mediator real fast. They can help them resolve which school district is best. But if you have to go before the judge for an actual evidentiary hearing, you're looking at by the end of the year. So it does take time. It absolutely takes time. And again, there's a lot of factors that go into it, as I stated. So it's something that I don't really recommend waiting on and doing sooner than later if you're even thinking about changing a school district.
So up until then, it's the status quo. So whatever school they're in, they're going to stay in, right?
Usually, yes, as long as they're qualified and are living in that property or something, or if it's a private school, if somebody's willing to pay for it, if they don't have an agreement otherwise, yeah. And judges usually don't like changing school districts for kids unless it absolutely makes sense. And there's, again, all kinds of issues and all kinds of things they look at. But these are important things that we need to send our clients and send people that are thinking about getting a divorce, or people that are having, as he said, after their judgment's already entered and post-judgment issues, send them to somebody like you guys who's going to sit down and figure out the area that they want to look in and calculate a rough estimate or idea of what the payment's going to look like and figure out whether or not they get qualified before they go and spend thousands of dollars to an attorney and fight a battle in court that could have been avoided had they had the reality. The big thing I find is people don't necessarily like to hear something realistic. I was on the phone with somebody on my way here who was calling me about a divorce, and this person just didn't want to hear what the reality is, and I guess must have spoken to an attorney that told her something totally different from what is realistically likely to happen. And she's talking about other lawyers that she met with and telling me what they said and telling me she didn't like them. Well, that's because they told her the reality of it. Yeah. And, sometimes people will tell somebody something just to get them on the hook, and they're going to be disappointed. And that's not the way to do it. So that's why it's important to go see you guys first to figure out, is this really the truth or not? It's great to have wishes.
But often when you're going through all that stress, it's just like you can't picture what reality is.
That's what I was going to say.
And we had a girl like just recently was a PhD, and she had never managed the finances, and she's a PhD and a teacher, and she needed that help and that assistance. And in her case, it was like, oh my gosh, you're so good, you're gonna be totally golden for moving here. But you're right. A lot of times people just don't want to. They want to put the blinders on. They don't want to see that.
And it's not that really it can't be done. What you show them actually can give them something to look forward to and something to work towards, and they can come back and address it later on. And again, if they have also done unrealistic expectation that's going to happen quickly, nothing's going to happen quickly unless you get really, really lucky. But otherwise, it takes time. So start working on it from now. But this is a good time of year to be thinking about it as kids are going back to school. While this year might be, I don't know, like saying anything's too late, but it might not work out the way you want it to this year. Now's the time to start for next year, especially with the backlog of courts, especially with how far they're setting out hearings.
Yeah, and people have to keep in mind there's more than just the logistical aspect of it, like getting them to school and, keeping them in the same district. Some parents, when they look at if their kids have special needs, so that's something big that you have to keep in mind. If you're getting certain services and in your school district and you're looking at, let's say, another district that doesn't maybe offer those, because there's lots of different levels of services with schools. So, when you look at private schools, they don't have a lot of that. And some private schools will just say, we can't really accommodate those needs. You need to look at more of a public school setting. There's things like class size. Everyone knows their child. Out of 3 kids I have, they're all different. I know which one's going to thrive in what type of an environment. So sometimes you just want to sit down with the admin or the principal or someone in the district and, find out what are your class sizes, what are your stats say, what's going on with your testing, get an idea of how they teach and what their foundations are. And that's like really getting down to what's best for kids. That's what I think that's what everybody should be everyone can come together, the courts, the attorneys, the actual two people getting divorced, and say, let's agree with one thing is we want what's best for the
Or
kids.
the parents could talk about it and figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
Instead of getting everybody else involved.
If they can do that, right? That's what you'd want.
That would be ideal.
That really would be
that
nice.
would be ideal. So
It
my
doesn't always
question
work
to
that way,
you,
though.
as you being a teacher and being a realtor, so an ex-teacher, I don't even like to say the word ex-teacher because you're always educating. So to me, you're very much still in a teaching mode, educator. So I don't want to say like an ex-teacher because I would hate to use that term. But while you're working with clients, I know you're not allowed to steer like this is a good community for schools.
Right.
Where do you send your clients, and where would you recommend individuals who are potentially going to be purchasing a home after the divorce to look at stats? Do you know a few?
Yes. So that's a good question because, again, and they ask all kinds of questions, and we have to tell them, listen, because of fair housing, because of a lot of rules and regulations, it is called steering. I can't really tell you should go to this area. But there are websites, off the top of my head, there's one called greatschools.com. I won't say that everything that they have on there is exactly it, but they have a lot of input from parents. And sometimes maybe it's a scorned parent, maybe, is commenting. But they do try and look at the data. They look at standardized testing. How does this district do with standardized testing? And again, that's not a great picture either because you have all different demographics in different areas.
Some test well, some don't test well.
There's all
don't.
kinds of things. I think my 2 cents on it is go visit the school district, find some other parents there, find some other kids there, see how your kid likes it, talk to other parents about their experiences, and
go to the city website.
People will have totally different opinions about it, but then you get a gauge for who you think you can relate to more. Is it the one that said the school sucks, or is it the one that said the school's phenomenal?
Right.
And get to know them and actually go see it, because all these different rankings, I don't know.
There's so much information online. If you want to find something out, I feel like you can. You can really start researching an area. You can find out what you need to find out.
Yeah, but not everything you find online is great. I was on the phone with a client this morning who apparently was Googling at the same time I was talking to her and finding out information that was the furthest thing from the truth. And I don't know which website or how it popped up on Google. But yeah, exactly.
What do you know?
Google said it.
You're not
this is what a judge is going to do.
Jeff, you don't know anything. Google said it. So
Holly, let's take example where everybody already has everything figured out. The school district, it's either approved by agreement or the judge has ordered it. Now they're ready to go find a house. How quick can you find them a house?
Right now, it depends. Well, I've got my 2 lenders sitting here, so they're fabulous. So we can get them in as quickly as they can move. They've got to get all their paperwork in. They've got to be ready to go. And really and truly, they've got to let me know what they want.
And obviously, it depends on the financing and all of that. But yeah, what they want.
What do you want? So don't tell me, don't give me this huge, range of 50 miles. Let's break it down. Like, where do you want to be? I tell them, go drive these areas. Take some time, drive through the areas. It's the worst when you pull up to a house. Oh, I don't like this area. Yeah. Okay, well, maybe that'll help us break it down.
Is it true what we're hearing now that there aren't necessarily all these options available, or are you seeing a shift now as the summer is coming nearly to an end, or what's it looking like? I guess that's more what I'm getting at, or my question is there availability, or am I going to have to sit and wait and wait it out for a certain period of time until something pops up, or can I say, hey, I want a house for let's say $500,000. I want it to be in this school district. Let's go find one.
Right.
And assuming they're not picky. Is that
so?
even
Here's the
possible?
thing. The question has a couple different answers. Number one is price point. Because if you would have said this to me 6 months ago, I would have said it's a bidding war all day long. It's taking us at least 2 to 3 times longer. We're writing many offers. We're in a mosh pit of a war. Okay. So now that's coming out of COVID because we had this pent up demand. We had so many people that wanted out for many different reasons. That's a whole nother day. But we had so many buyers. The rate was so low. Perfect storm. The rate was so low. Everyone could pretty much afford a house. It was cheaper than renting for sure. Well, now we've got a lot of millennials who are entering, but they're not giving us a house back. They're just taking one. So even though we are seeing recently, we're having more inventory, thank goodness, than we had maybe 2-3 months ago, it's still not keeping up with our demand. So we're still in a seller's market. So buyers are still in a situation. It depends on the area. Under certain, I would say under 300,000 for sure, under 250 in maybe Macomb County, let's say, it's still a multiple offers situation on a great property. You mentioned 500,000. If you go 400, maybe 500 and up, it's a very different situation. So if my buyer can purchase more, it depends on what they can do. If they have a conventional versus an FHA, it's all in what I'm given to work with. So I'm going to get them into a house. It's just if they put themselves in the right position, if they've listened to their lender and they've made some great financial situations and they position themselves.
They'll be able to grab
The
something
sales
from
cycle
it.
for everybody is so
Yes.
much different too, because you can have your engineering type that's got to go through everything and spend
for
like so
sure.
much time. And then I had a customer to answer that question. He called me up on Saturday, and I'm like, I'll write you a pre-approval. It's like your tax return's not done for 21. It's being filed Wednesday, and if you told me how much he's going to make yesterday, well, no, on Sunday it was we got a purchase agreement
Okay.
over, so it's 24 hours, and we're closing on August 28th.
Awesome.
So
Great
it's
work.
like,
Great work.
That's always nice, but sometimes people just have to educate and feel comfortable and go through the process.
And are rates affecting that right now, Ken? Are you seeing that in your business?
Rates are actually settled down. They went up almost to about 6%, and they're right down around high fives, low fours right now. So it is affecting it, but they're still really, really good. And even prices right now are only about 15-20% higher than they were 20 years ago when rates were in the sixes. So the prices per payment is not terrible, especially with rents going up. It makes the housing market look that much more attractive. A lot of people are thinking it's going to crash or something. I think there'll be a little slide down, but I don't think we'll see anything huge.
It's
It's
just a
just shifting.
small slide. So everybody who's been pre-approved at the 450 mark, let's just say 6 months ago, that's where they were pre-approved. That whole category of people all got knocked down a peg together. Not one's not special versus the other. They all got knocked down. So instead of that 450 range, due to the interest rates, they probably were knocked down to 400.
And that's why
household.
it's tougher because everybody's playing at that level and you've got everyone trying to get this one price point. That's where the challenge comes
They
in.
all got knocked down, though. They all got knocked down.
And
Right.
then we hear that, but then we also see stuff on the other extreme end, or I don't necessarily want to say extreme, but today I was on the phone with another lawyer. We're talking about a former mutual client's property that they put on the market for a little over $5 million. And I thought it was going to take months or maybe even years to sell, like had been the case in the past when my clients have owned properties like that. Apparently this one sold in less than 14 days and it was a cash deal, closed quickly. Money was with the title company and being dispersed in no time. Another one is there was a house in Birmingham, which I didn't think was as hot of area as would command this price. And literally it went on the market. Sunday was the first day they had to open house and went on the market and sold for $200,000 over asking in a cash deal that came in immediately on Sunday. The first person came
Jeff,
in to
make
open
sure
house.
tell them they need a tax write-off. They need a mortgage.
That's right. That's right. That's
well,
right.
again, and it's still, there's not as many properties as, we would like to see, even though it is increasing. And school districts, so you're naming some areas that have great reputations,
and
so
good
people
school districts
want,
or people that people want to be in, right?
People will sacrifice in different ways to be in different districts if they feel like that's going to give their kids, a better education. That's what we all want.
Yeah.
They want to do that. So, and then there's always a unicorn somewhere
For
around
sure,
there, right?
always. Ken,
I
quick
wanna
question
catch
for
one of
you
those
based on what
unicorns.
you just told me that they could have and obviously none of us are accountants or tax professionals to give tax advice, but you did say that they might be able to get a write-off. So my question to this, I think you can answer is, are you noticing or do you have people sometimes that will do a cash deal that have the means to hurry up and win the bidding war to get the deal closed quickly and then come to you to refinance it?
It's called delayed financing.
Okay, is that the term? All
Yeah.
right.
So a lot when the market was super, super hot, it's when those 200,000 and 300,000, we'd actually go to mom and dad who has 300,000 or 400,000 in equity, get an equity line, and the mom and dad will write the check, and then we'll get the mortgage usually, close 2 weeks, 3 weeks afterwards. So we had a lot of deals like that happen in previous
make it happen.
last year.
Awesome.
Yeah,
we had one together.
So yeah,
We had one together that had to
it's
do
a
that.
smart thing to do because cash
You
is
and I
king.
had one together.
I know.
And it's
we do it all.
Yeah. Sometimes, you get that cash buyer, especially if a deal fell through, you might be able to get like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 discount on it. So it's a really powerful thing to look at, leverage. If you're a cash buyer, that means there's no mortgage contingencies. You can get the money in 2 weeks. I'm probably going to take 10 or 15 grand less if I had a deal fell through and I need to get the money somewhere else. So
And then some people talk to their financial advisor, and if they were pulling money out of an IRA or 401 or whatever they did, they had X amount of days to get it back. So as long as they did that and they were strategic with their lender and they made sure that money could go back so they don't get taxed crazy, they were doing that. People were pulling out all the stops to win. It was a battlefield.
Well, and our client, she was so wonderful. I know that we need to wrap up, but getting back to the school district, the client that you and I worked with that ended up doing a delayed financing, who paid cash, parents came in and paid cash, was because she wanted to be in the Dakota district.
Yes.
And she specifically wanted that, and she was in a price point that everybody wanted to be in at that school district.
For busing, we forget about busing because that's the other thing.
And the busing
if you
is
want to be in
huge.
busing because you're a working
did
parent,
that.
you need that bus to come get your kid. You have to ask, is it a walking? Because a lot of our district has some of kids are walking.
We're walking
If you want
in
the
my
bus,
district 'cause we're
that's
too
when
close.
they're saying to me, not just a district. You know, it's for Chippewa, for example, there's 2 high schools. There's Chippewa Valley and there's Dakota. So it's like if they're in a Chippewa Valley, but their house is in Dakota, they're not going to get busing. So that's another thing that makes it even more challenging is not just the same district. What's the bus schedule? So you really do have to do some due diligence and check into it. Mm-hmm. If not, you're going to be doing that drive every day or latchkey or something. And it just makes everything even harder. And God knows we don't need that.
How do you write latchkey in a divorce anyways? Oh my
Oh,
God.
it's childcare.
There's so many things, but we should wrap this up, Jeff.
So I guess the moral of back to school season is, in addition to everything else, check with your attorney, check with your lenders, your mortgage professionals, check with your realtor, and also obviously check with your tax professionals to figure out the smartest way to do stuff, and while making sure everything is still legal at the same time. And
Absolutely.
And hopefully you'll be enjoying a beautiful house and happy back to school season.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And hope you don't spend too much.
I try not to break the bank.
What I'm about to do.
That's not always
Please stop
avoidable.
buying all of the supplies before the rest of us go.
Come to our basement because we have 4,000.
Okay,
things of
that's not
Elmer's
fair.
glue.
When hold on,
thought we
that's
gotta
not
go to
fair.
that.
Wait, when the teacher tells you we need help with pencils, and I buy a whole bunch off of Amazon, like 100 pencils sharpened right after Christmas, and then COVID hit, and we have 100 pencils because we never went back to school.
Do they get brittle or anything like that?
So we have a lot of supplies
Put
because
mothballs in there,
I
so-
did it halfway through the year, charity thing, and then
All right.
ugh,
All right.
All right.
Lots of money.
We'll,
On that
we'll
note-
check out the basement later. We'll see you all next week. Thank you for joining us today.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.